Hey guys, this is Mr. Lowe. Today we are talking about multiplying integers. Our objective for the day is that we are going to be able to multiply integers, so that's positive and negative whole numbers including 0, by using models and our past knowledge of multiplication. So we're going to start by looking at some examples here. The first one is, while playing a board game, Unlucky Lawrence had to move back 2 spaces for 4 turns in a row. What integer represents his change in position? Well, we're talking about integers, so when we're talking about moving backwards, or we're talking about moving down or below sea level, or just things like that, we're using negative integers. So what integer can we use to model his move backwards? Well, we're going to use -2. It's backwards, the opposite of 2. And he did that for 4 turns in a row. So what integer represents his change in position? Well, we can think of this as multiplication. So rather than taking the time and saying -2 plus -2 plus -2 plus -2, we're not going to spend our time writing all that over and over. We're just going to think of this as, since it's repeated addition, it's just multiplication. So it's going to be -2 times 4, right? And we know that repeated addition is multiplication. So we're going to go -2 spaces 4 times. So I've done the first one here. So we want -2, -2, -2, -2. So we went backwards. We went -2 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and we ended at -8. So we can see that if -2 times 4 equals -8. The next one we're going to look at is an example that we went over on our integer word problems, and that was last week. And so again, on that, we were looking at writing it as an addition problem. But for this one, we're going to be looking at writing it as a multiplication problem. So Felix reported that the coldest day on record for his town was 5 times colder than yesterday's temperature of -4 degrees. What was the temperature of the coldest day on record in Felix's town? Well, it was 5 times colder than -4. So 5 times colder than -4. Well, we're just going to go backwards, -4, 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we went -4 spaces 5 times. And where do we end? -20. And that's going to be degrees. Now, hopefully you're realizing that, oh, wait, it's just the same multiplication, right? 5 times 4 is 20, but we're just in the negative side. Hopefully you saw that last time. 2 times 4 is 8, but we're just at -8. So our multiplication facts aren't changing. There's also a different way you can model it, and it's the same as just using the counters that we've normally used. So rather than using a number line, we can also use counters. So race car game takes 6 points away every time you hit a cone. If you hit 3 cones, what integer would represent the points you lost? Well, that's -6 points, right? Because I'm taking away 6 points every time I hit a cone. I hit 3 cones. What integer would represent the points you lost? Okay, well, we could also model this. So I'm getting -6 points. So remember, counters were just the negative tiles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's one group of -6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 2 groups of -6. How many cones did I hit? I hit 3. So I got one more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just like we would model these in addition, we don't see any 0 pairs or anything like that. So we just have If you count, we have 6, 12, 18 negatives. So my answer is negative 18. And again, it's just the multiplication problem. Negative 6 times 3 equals negative 18. And just remembering the fact too, 6 times 3 is 18. So our multiplication facts aren't changing. We're just taking a look at the sign and seeing whether it's going to be negative or positive. Now, each example before was a positive number multiplied by a negative number. So the first one we had negative 2 times 4, negative 4 times 5, 3 times negative 6. And so what do we notice about the factors? Well, the factors are opposite signs, so negative and a positive, negative and a positive and a negative. So it doesn't matter which order these are in because multiplication order doesn't matter, but it's just two opposite factors. Two of the signs, or the factors have opposite signs. Now, what do you notice about the products? Well, the products are negative. They're negative 8, negative 20, negative 18. So they're all negative. So if I multiply a negative times a positive number, it's going to be negative. What about positive numbers? Well, we already know what happens, right? Positive 3 times positive 4 is 12. That's just what we've been doing since like 3rd grade. So we're not going to talk about that. But this one we are going to talk about. So what happens when I multiply two negatives? Well, two negatives gets a little tricky, but the easiest way I can think about it is that we are just going to remember what we talked about at the very beginning of this, and about negative meaning opposite, right? So opposite. If I think of this negative as the opposite, it's asking me to find the opposite of, so I'm just going to make a parentheses here. It's asking me to find the opposite of 3 times negative 4. I'll put that whole thing in brackets there. And we just found out that if it's a positive times a negative, I use my multiplication facts. I know 3 times 4 is 12. It's negative because negative and a positive is negative. But it's not asking for this. It's asking for the opposite of this negative 12. Well, what's the opposite of negative 12? It's going to be positive 12. So our answer for something like this is going to be positive. So our multiplication rules are right here. Positive times a positive is going to equal positive. So we should have that remembered and written down, equals positive. A positive times a negative or a negative times a positive. Like I said, remember, the order does not matter. They're interchangeable. So if they are opposite signs, then they are going to give you a negative answer. And then if they are negative times a negative equals a positive, we just found out that it's wanting the opposite of that negative answer. So we are going to end up in the positive. So this is true for any number. An easy way to remember it is if they're the same sign, it's positive. If the factors are opposite signs, then the answer is negative. So hopefully we're able to multiply integers by using those models and our past knowledge of multiplication. We should just be able to be looking at some basic integers and solving by using those knowledge of multiplication, right? I should be able to look at 7 times negative 2 and know, okay, it's going to be 14. I have a negative and a positive, so I'm going to be on the negative side of 0. So my answer is negative 14. I should look at the two negatives. If I'm doing negative 6 times a negative 4, I'm saying, okay, well, it's wanting the opposite of a negative number. So my answer is actually going to be in the positives. So instead of at negative 24, I'm going to be at a positive 24. So hopefully rewatching this video working through the problems that we've had in class, you're going to be able to do these relatively easy, and you'll be able to multiply integers by using models and our past knowledge of multiplication.